My name's Jennifer. I'm with Radiant Financial Group, and I'd like to introduce my partner, friend, and the broker owner of Radiant Financial Group, Stacy Pingree. Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we spent a lot of time talking about creative solutions, ways to build wealth through real estate. And we wanted to narrow down one particular topic as it pertains to college students. And we're talking directly to college students, to college graduates, and to the parents of those kids going into college. And we're going to talk about a lot of different topics on how you can leverage your college student in building some wealth, not only for yourself, but potentially for your college student. How graduating college kids can use the support of their parents to start building the right foundation to be able to purchase, whether it be right now or here early in the future, and just a lot of other tools and creative strategies. So should we dive into it?
Yeah, let's dive into it. Let's go.
All right. So Stacy's love and passion in this industry is helping to educate investors on how to build wealth in real estate through investment purchases. So let's jump right into talking directly to parents, because you and I both have 18-year-olds or almost 18-year-olds going into their senior year of high school. We're going to have college students in the next year. So what is one strategy and way that a parent can leverage their college student right now in starting to build some investment wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me personally, I mean, Jen, you're around me all the time, and it's like oozes out of it pumps, through my veins about obviously the passion I have around helping to build legacy wealth in a single generation with real estate. And so for me, I this last couple of years, I mean, as we watch the mortgage industry take this, this turn into higher interest rates and we've seen higher inflation. What's happening to a lot of these people, they get out of college. I mean, as prices are going up in houses and interest rates are high and everything else is higher, inflation is up. So now groceries cost more and gas costs more. It's not just students that are feeling that, obviously it's parents too. And one of the things that I love about, I mean, but everybody has to have a place to live, right? We all have a place to live. And, it's a challenge because when these kids when they're going off to college, of course, the first year or two, you might be looking at, just dorm housing and, I know that's what we're looking at, right? First year, freshman year. But I mean, immediately, I mean, like we had a little college student working as an intern for us, right? And she called me and said, hey, I've got to get out of this dorm situation, or I'm in this, what do I do? And so we got with her parents. And so what we're trying to, help them see or cast a vision for that early on is, as a family, you can literally go in. Again, it depends on the community, the college, the environment, how home prices, but like you can go in and help them purchase, as a parent, maybe help your child purchase a property, whether that, and we'll talk through that, but they can become almost the property manager, if you will. And this can be an education property for everybody. It can be a great process, a great project for not only the parents to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in on a loan together. We're going to close on a loan together. We're going to help you with down payment or qualifying. But ultimately, we're in this together. We're a partnership on this. So, I mean, it's a great way for us to get as parents to help guide our kids. I mean, can you imagine if the first home that they purchased or the first home you purchased was like with the help of your parents, and you had roommates that were living there that were helping to pay the mortgage, and so I mean, it's an amazing scenario. Then they can go on to keep that home, or they can decide that in 4 years or 3 years or whatever, whenever they're done living in it, they can sell it. And I don't like to sell anything, but they can sell it, or they can hold on to it and just rent it out in that college town. In most college environments, you're going to have constant rental. I know at Tempe here in Arizona, it's a hotspot. Grand Canyon, same thing. I mean, that whole area around Grand Canyon University is another real hotspot for housing. So anyway, that's what I love.
So let's break that down into little bite-sized pieces real quick. So what you're saying is, instead of doing dorms, rental properties around the area, why doesn't a parent consider purchasing a property in the area of the college? And is it my understanding that you're saying, let's put the student as the primary borrower on the loan?
Mhm.
Is that correct? Because, Okay, so my first question as a parent is how can my kid who's just in college be a primary resident on a loan? So explain that. How do we do that?
Well, let's qualify it a little bit. So, you know, we hope that by the time we got kids going into college, at least maybe not, like I said, maybe it's not that first year. If you have a senior or a freshman in college right now, a senior in high school or a freshman in college right now, and they do not have a credit score, the first thing that we need to do is you need to have a conversation with us about making sure that they get a credit profile. They don't necessarily, I mean, they don't necessarily have to take out a bunch of credit cards. They can simply be added as an authorized user on their parents' card. But if you haven't had that conversation with your kids about credit, let's get on that stat. You know, that's number one. Number two is, yes, as a primary resident in the house, they will live there. It affords you the better interest rates, you know, the primary interest rates versus like an investor rate. And you're allowed as a parent or family member, even it can be even an aunt or uncle, it could be a big brother, and, you know, a grandparent. You're allowed to have a non-occupying co-borrower and still take advantage of the first-time homebuyer 3% down payment or FHA's 3.5% down payment. So I mean, it lets you get in with very little investment, and your income, if your kid's in college, your income will help to qualify, you know, the income of the parents or the non-occupying co-borrower will help to qualify the student, you know, this who's probably not working or working just a part-time job or something, you know.
So you and I have been in this industry a long time, and we used to call these sort of like kitty condo loans back in the day, right? But I mean, so it's true, you can actually have a primary borrower that has no income, and the parent being a non-occupied co-borrower, co-signing for that transaction, and the income of that parent being utilized to qualify 100% for that payment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So then let's talk about this from an investment perspective because, you know, purchasing a house right now with investment interest rates and stuff might seem to someone, hey, how is the affordability of that? But how can that student who's living in it and the parent who's co-signing for it, how can they create an investment opportunity out of this?
Yeah. So, I mean, are you talking about roommates?
Roommates. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, now if we're going to buy a 4 or 5 bedroom house or, you know, 4 bedroom house and we're going to have, you know, I mean, I know boys and girls are different. So I'll tell you that my girls would say it's going to be $1,500 a room or $1,000 a room. And they'd only put one girl per room. I've seen boys though, put two boys per room and now it's only $500 a boy, you know, a roommate. But anyway, so you come up with a, you know, obviously it's going to be driven off of what your mortgage payment is. We have to sit down and look at, you know, what are rents in the area? What's going to be the value in this, you know, the savings that they're going to have by shared utilities and all those kind of things. But you basically say, you can design it however you'd like to, but you can say, all right, the mortgage is 3,200. Everybody's going to pay $800 a month. You know, that's how we're going to make this work. Even the person, even the student, right? That's your child. They'll have their $800, and whether you pay that as a parent or they're working to pay that. And then every other roommate that they have, you know, then that matches up to meets the $3,200 mortgage payment. They can be designed to be $1,000 a month and to have your own room, and that covers utilities. So, you know, I mean, it just depends on the structure to make it work, but I think, depends on you know, how much the mortgage payment is that we're trying to offset as well. So
Yeah.
each of those is a little bit custom, but that's a reasonable, I think, expectation on, you know, having an apartment, or if you've looked at apartment life, even in a college town, these apartments are expensive. I mean, a 2 bedroom apartment can be oftentimes $2,500 to $2,800 a month, you know, so
Yeah.
it's expensive.
And you know, a lot of times what people are doing is finding houses that have sort of a great room scenario, or they're creating a great room scenario and creating like a co-op environment in the house. So they, you know, they create sort of um a living room that everybody can in the kitchen environment. So it's something that you guys can just all, how do you say it? Live in the environment together,
Yeah,
and then they
yeah.
have their own individual rooms and bathrooms and stuff. Ideally, it would be great if the parent could work the income coming in to where maybe their student doesn't actually have to pay anything, that all
Right.
the rentals of the different rooms pays for the mortgage payment. And in that scenario, it's kind of a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the ultimate, and then ultimately, you know, you've invested in a property that you would have been shelling out money for room and board anyway. It's one of the more expensive parts, as I'm finding out. You know, my daughter's going to get lots of, she's got scholarship opportunities coming in for, you know, what she's into. And I mean, but the room and board stuff, a lot of times is not really covered. So, I mean, I think this is an expense you might have anyway. So it's like, now we can actually, make it an expense that makes sense, that because we're going to turn it into an investment, you know, ultimately, and create, you know, an appreciating asset that somebody else is paying the mortgage on.
Right. And then what kind of tax benefits do the parents potentially have as the investor or the
I
non-occupied
mean,
co-borrower
you know,
on it?
it's such a big question, because you open up a huge can of worms when you start talking about tax strategies, because everybody's income scenario is different. But if you are W-2, high wage earning W-2s, and you don't really have you haven't looked at real estate, by all means, please do, because it should be high on your radar anyway for creating a really incredible write-off, and an appreciating asset in a time where you know, you take on, when you take on a residential real estate property, and it's as an investment, you take a large amount of the depreciation up front. So over these 25, 26 years, right? So you're able to really offset some of your W-2 tax hit. And so, I mean, it's different for everybody, but most definitely there is a tax advantage. And if you're high wage earning W-2 and you have not looked at residential rental properties as an investment strategy and a tax strategy, you should, for
Yeah.
sure.
And obviously reach out to the CPA or financial advisor to get all the details specifically outlined. But in this scenario, you'll be looking at writing, you know, room rent, right? It would be
Yep.
more of a room rent scenario.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
I'm
Is there
seeing
anything else? Oh,
just to give a little bit on that. I mean, I've seen the app, and I meant for our call to have it up, and I will, maybe we can put it in the notes of this as we air this out. But there's an app right now just for rentals. And basically it's a room share rental, and you probably can just pull it up in an app, look at it in the app store right now. But there's it's like Pad Share or something like that. But basically it's just for renters. It doesn't have anything to do with investors, you know. So this concept by the students already is already, it's already very popular, and I would say even post student. I mean, the young, you know, in their mid-20s is actually, it was a client of mine whose daughter told me about this, that you can go on and just there's just an app that you can go in and see who's just letting a room, who's just got a room to let, right? And so then you're just going in as with roommates you don't know, and you're going to maybe just do a room rent, but it's like, again, $800 or $1,000. Affordability is our biggest issue right now in housing. So, I mean, there are going to be innovative ways to try to find a way to, you know, to have let people afford housing. And so this is
yeah.
one of those ways, you know, it's really a share.
And purchasing, let's just say parent sees this and they're like, you know what, this is a great idea. I want to purchase a house right away here in August or September. This is technically a primary residence. So there are refinance opportunities when the rates start to go down that we can bring down that payment and make it a little more affordable and even better investment in the future. So now,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and what is the opportunity right now in real estate, especially here in Arizona, because both of us are in Arizona right now? What's the opportunity for them finding a property?
Um, you mean as far as inventory?
Yes.
You know, inventory has really changed in February of 2023. Just to give you an example of, you know, we knew that appreciation had gone so bananas in Arizona. And for 2 years there in a row, we were like 25-30% appreciation through 21 and 22. And then as things started to kind of cool off and rates were coming up, from the gangbusters, you know, market that we had, and that really low inventory, it really drove up. So it drove up all these prices, but a lot of that, like, I would call it like frothiness, you know, the nice little frothiness on the coffee there, that has really been blown off, because what you're seeing now is that a house that's really priced well, and it's a nice house, it's a great product, and doesn't need a lot, maybe it's turnkey, it's selling quick, it's still selling quickly, it's moving, you know, it's moving, I'd say fast, normal market speeds. But there are a lot of properties that maybe have not been touched, or just in disrepair, like they need some more, they need some TLC, you know, that kind of situation. There are deals right now. I mean, I would tell you that I'm seeing investors back in the market. There was in February 23, there were literally 3 homes in the West Valley Surprise. Like when I would do a search, which is where our office, you know, where we've been for so long. And I use it as a gauge for investors, like, because if you can't get started and hit some cash flow points, you know, with these lower entry level, investor entry, you know, entry points like 300,000 on a purchase, then it was really hard to get to cash flow points on as a tenant or you know, with tenant landlord situation. So right now we're seeing, and I haven't done the search recently, but I know that there were like over 400, you know, properties listed, you know, in that broader search now under 300 or at the 300 mark. So it is a different market than it was a year ago if you looked. So I think there's a larger inventory. I know that some of the new builders are selling to investors now, which we've seen was still with their incentives. So it's just, you know, it's time to get back out there and really look if you have not looked in a while, for
Good.
sure.
And so just to kind of finish up this topic real quick, one of the things that I want to bring up is the level of responsibility that your college student needs to have and what it potentially will do to create responsibility in that person, because they're going to be a property manager for the most part.
Yeah.
Obviously they need to find other students that are responsible, going to take care of the house, but they're living in that property. They're, you know, vested on the property as owner. The loan is in their name. So to me as a parent, it really does step up the level of responsibility that you're creating in the student and really set the right foundation for them to be able to buy other real estate in the future. Don't you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I think we better be teaching them now, you know, I mean, this is something that we're really passionate about and in my family. And, you know, my kids know that, I mean, they understand that like probably wherever they go to college, we're going to be looking at real estate. And so it's been a thing that even in the top 10 schools that we have on our list right now for that my daughter's looking at, and she'll apply to, one of the considerations was the real estate in the area and the growth for the area. And is it sustainable? You know, what does it look like? I mean, it doesn't have to be the perfect, I mean, you know, I don't know what the perfect situation is, but, you know, is it an Airbnb style market? Is it a long-term rental market? Just, you know, I mean, we've looked already at, there are different ways to invest in real estate. We've looked at that with every single college campus and city.
Love it. All right, so let's back up, because you said one thing that was super important is it's difficult to put a student on a loan if they don't have any credit. What are some things that parents can do right now to really help and I'm going to go back into high school. There are some high school, college, what are some foundational principles and things that the parents can do to help start building the credit foundation for their student?
Well, I think if you have not had the conversation with your kids yet about debit versus credit, and that debit is what you have available to spend, you know, and credit is what you've promised to pay back and you don't have it today, right? So, or you I tell my kids, credit is for convenience. It's for convenience. I'm on vacation. I don't want to carry, you know, $2,000 in cash, and we know we're going to be doing activities and things like that. So we have it on a credit card. We come home. Most of the time we've tried to pay for our vacation before we even left. You know what I mean? We're trying to be that advanced on it, but credit cards are something that should be very much used as a convenience only. And we don't want them thinking of living in, you know, on credit cards. So I think teaching them that, one of the ways you can, you know, you can co-sign with your kids on a credit card of their own. You can also add them to one of your accounts as an authorized user, knowing though that they will receive a credit card that will be on your account. And if you're obviously able to monitor it then and see what's going on, but knowing that if they actually spend, you're responsible for it as well. So I would just be cautious of that. But you know, we want to see them. A lot of times, it takes history. It takes time to build a history and credit. So I always say, like, the golden ticket is, if your parents have a credit card, if the parents have a credit card that's at least 24 months old, that has great payment history and is like at least 50 under, you know, utilized at 50% or less. For the most part, you know, it's a $10,000 limit and you use it like 5,000 max and kind of pay it off every month. That is a golden ticket for us to add someone to. And you can add your children, you can add even an elderly parent if they needed credit. I mean, we've seen it go that direction too. But because sometimes people just stop spending when they get older on credit cards, they just use what they're, you know, there's what they have coming in cash or whatever, and they end up losing their credit score after
Yeah.
for inactivity. So anyway, but that's a whole other episode. But I think with the kids, if you can get them understanding that credit is really important. It's something that they will need because whether they rent an apartment, whether they buy a car, lease a car, I mean, any of those things that they go to access credit for, you know, maybe a surgery even. I mean, if student loans, I mean, their credit is going to be looked at and analyzed, and it's really important to create good spending habits and know and understand a budget. But we
Yeah.
don't want to get into
Well,
talk.
I always say that credit is like building a resume on your ability to repay, and it's establishing sort of your integrity. So we look at the accounts that the credit accounts they have available. How long have they had them? Have you been making those repayments on time? And that sort of builds your resume for spending. So we want to obviously build up their credit score. Credit score is super important in qualifying for a loan. It affects the interest rate, which affects the payment. So it's all super important. One thing you mentioned is authorized user versus co-signing. One thing I wanted to bring up is a parent who has a long established credit card. You can add your child, if they'll qualify, as a co-borrower to that credit card. The great thing about that is it gives them immediate history, the history you have on that credit card. It gives them immediate history of that particular card. Now, you can choose not to give them the card. So they don't necessarily have access to spending on it. But the thing about being a co-borrower on it is if you default, they've defaulted on that. So the situation has to be right, but it is a great way to get immediate credit. The authorized user side of it gives them an immediate trade line as well, but the effect on the credit is a little different because as an authorized user, you're not guaranteeing the payment on that, correct?
Yeah, and one other thing I've seen, just to add to that, like just thinking about how your credit, you said resume triggered this for me. You know, we really advise. I mean, they'll get into college situations at school, and we've run into this a time or two where they think they're just doing a friend a favor. You know, they'll co-sign for a friend at school on something, and because the friend goes, "Oh, my parents just won't help me," you know, and um, don't do that. Don't let them co-sign. Have the conversation about credit. I mean, we have some really great tips. We can even add those. We can even put our credit tips, like a sheet, you know, for getting started to build credit. We'll put that in the link in the bio of this video. But I think, you know, there are some great tips for parents to use just to like get a baseline of knowledge. And, you know, I know Jen, you do a whole series with the credit with My Credit Guy on building credit. So, you know, again, tap into these resources that are everywhere. You know, you can pull your credit. They can look at their credit for free. You know, if they're looking at it on their own through through Credit Karma or myfico.com. You can pull your whole credit report down once a year for free through myfico.com. So just use those resources and make sure that they're aware of what's being reported.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about down payment. What can a parent do right now to help them maybe help a future homeowner, being their kid post graduating or while they're in college, maybe save for a down payment? How could a parent help in that?
Yeah, so we're talking about like we're talking about kids in college, but I mean this doesn't have to end. I mean, let's say they're out of college now and they move to an area, you know, to take their first job and they actually have great income. Maybe they don't even need a co-borrower to be on the loan with them anymore for qualifying purposes, right? Their income is enough. I have a great scenario right now. I've got a nurse graduated at ASU. She's moving to Atlanta, and her parents were like, she can qualify on her own, but she doesn't have, you know, 3 or 3.5% to put down. So we talked about they're going to just gift the down payment to her, and she's going to pay it back over, you know, whatever period of time. Like, I mean, over the course of, you know, there's no real payback terms, but in her mentality, she's like, you know, I'm going to get a roommate. She's actually orchestrated this. She took the initiative and said, I just am short the down payment. So they've had funds sitting there, and they were like, it's sitting in the bank earning 5%, but she started working with an agent in Atlanta, in one of the suburbs of Atlanta. She found a great property. She said, I'm going to be right by where this hospital is. And there's all these nurses that need, young nurses and travel nurses that need rooms. And she's already built a model for it. So travel nurse is a great one, by the way, because they come in and they have large per diems that they can spend, and they love to get just a room with other nurses, because then they're all working kind of, everyone's working all the time.
Yeah.
So that's another, just a great avenue. But in this scenario, I mean, she just needed down payment. She's going to handle, in fact, she will cash flow, because her house price is somewhere right around 400, but her room rents are going to be like a couple $1,000 a piece, because she's going to rent them to professionals. And she's going to pretty much have her rent, her part of the mortgage paid for by these other two tenants. So again, they'll give her the down payment. She'll set her money aside and maybe pay them back over time, or roll it forward to another property down the road. But they're already talking about, this will be the first property, and when I buy another one and I upgrade, I'll just keep this as a rental. But that's amazing to have that kind of, like, what does success look like for you? And that's what it is. I mean, opening up your perspective there to those opportunities, I think can be really life-changing, especially as young as she is. She's 22 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. And so parents can obviously set up a savings account, get with your financial advisor, and some interest-bearing account, and set money aside, and then maybe be able to give those funds to, their student or to their child as a down payment. You can also just gift the funds. And that's incredible, because a lot of parents have trusts and stuff that they've set up that the kids can't access till obviously after they pass away. Well, what about helping your child build wealth in real estate right now? And instead of delaying those funds, gifting it for their first house purchase. So that's
I
an
mean,
incredible consideration.
it's such a huge opportunity. I mean, if you look at appreciation over the course of a 10-year period, we take this 22-year-old girl and we look at her at 32. I mean, what's going to happen in appreciation? I mean, 3% per year. I mean, I haven't run the exact numbers on it, but I'm going to guess it's going to be somewhere around on that entry level price at 400,000. It'll be somewhere around at least 150 or 180, between 150 and 180,000 dollars in appreciation. I mean, then she can, over the course of time, as you mentioned earlier, she can refinance this property while she's still living in there as her primary. She can get that rate as low as possible before she moves on to do something else. But in the meantime, the family has really built, if she's gonna, whether it's on her own or whether she decides to partner with the parents for their gracious initial down payment or whatever, she can even funnel that back out to them at when she, they could move on and buy something bigger together, roll that equity forward into another property. It just creates a lot of opportunity. It's going to open the doors, and it is going to set apart. I mean, I without getting into, too much like soapbox about where I see the country going, but the mentality of, I mean, if inflation keeps coming up and salaries don't track, right? Like the issue we've had, income for people and wages don't track up to keep, then I mean, when is there a point where you can't afford to buy? And that scares me, especially for our kids now. I mean, in this next decade of from 18, where my daughter is going to be here soon, to through her 20s. I mean, I need to get her buying. I need to get her in, because there could be another decade from now. I mean, will her income be caught up to where our inflation is on and the affordability on these houses? And I mean, the things I can't control. I can't see into the future and plan all that, but I can say, let's get started now. Let's do anything we can to get started now, because you always need a place to live. So you can either rent it out or live in it, right? You can still rent it out. It'll be an option to rent it out too. And I mean, I just feel like the appreciation on a rental property, along with the tax strategy and tax advantages, it lets these kids it gives them a side-by-side really plan. It's like, I'm building wealth here as I'm, the thing about real estate that I love so much, Jen, and this about me, is I'm a worker. I'm a grinder, right? And I've tried to teach my kids, like, you want something, you go work for it, and this is what you do. But there are only 40 hours that, like technically like 40 hours in a week, right? That you're supposed to be working. I mean, maybe that's 60, maybe you work more and you work 60 or 70 or whatever. But let's just say that you have that's actively when you can be earning, active money, active income. What I love about the real estate side of it is, how incredible is it to teach them the concept right now that somebody else, that you're also earning with this passive income, right? Somebody else is paying off a mortgage that you were able to leverage. You were able to buy a house borrow the rest of the money from the bank. The bank just wants their payments out over 15 or 20 or 30 years, and you'll be able to keep that property. You'll pay it off eventually, and you'll be able to keep that property, and it'll earn revenue for you. It will just be continuing to throw cash flow at you even after it's paid off. But you're using the bank's money to grow an asset. It's leverage. It's an incredible tool. So teaching that to the kids now that get passive income working with active income, I mean, they'll be in a wealthy situation for
Yeah.
themselves.
One of, I have an opportunity every semester to go talk to students over at GCU. And I love it because one of the things that I always end my conversation with them is giving them a future perspective of what's possible for them. And so we always talk about, what if you purchase your first property at 22, 23 years old? You put a 3% down, or you utilize first time home buyer down payment assistance or something. You get into that property and you live in it for the next 3 years. You leave that property, you convert it to an investment property. Hopefully it's cash flowing at that point, so your renter is paying that mortgage down. And you do that again. You put 5% down maybe on the next one, and then you live in that for 3 years and you convert that one to an investment. And let's just say by the time you hit 30, you buy your third property. And let's just say you never buy real estate again, but those 3 properties, and all you do is hold on to those properties for the next 30 years. Properties do not appreciate. Let's just say they do not go up in value, which we know from the history of real estate that that's not the case. But let's just say that's it. They will turn 60 years old or 65 years old and have potentially 3 paid off properties and over $1 million in asset, which is probably likely well over $1 million in value. And they could have just income generating properties to help them with retirement. And that is just a student who chooses in his early 20s to capture that first 10 years. And so, I mean, the majority of wealth that is made out there is made through real estate, right? It's not being a nurse or, a teacher. I mean, that pays your bills throughout your lifetime, but real wealth can be made through real estate. So I just like to open up the minds of these students to see the potential that they have for long-term wealth by starting early. And you parents have the opportunity to guide them, support them, and help them in this process as well.
And sometimes you got to totally remove yourself from the situation. It's hard to do, but to really get like a new perspective on something, but it's good for you, right? So there was a mentality. I know my mom was I'm from Montana. My mom is super conservative. She's like a saver, and she'd rather see the money in her bank account than invest it somewhere that could have just the smallest amount of risk. And that's okay. I mean, that has served her. She's done things differently. She also doesn't spend a lot, so she needs, I would say, less. We probably spend more. My husband is like crazy. But my mentality was, listen, we want to have, if your mentality is that, and it used to be also that you pay your mortgage off. You get your, what you should worry about is your own personal property. Get that paid off, and then you just sit there. Well, I've got clients that are fully still working. Okay, they're still bringing in an income, and I understand the concept of having your home paid off when you're retired, and your income's maybe going to come down to a fixed income and all those other things. Or you've got a plan, and it's going to be $10,000. You'd rather not have a mortgage, $10,000 a month coming in, and you'd rather not be paying a mortgage with that money. You'd rather be enjoying your life. I get it, but while you're working, put those down payments, put the extra down payment into properties that you can multiply. It's like you can grow little babies, little gremlin house babies, right? You just can have 2 or 3 other of these things. You'd have your own property that you're still paying because you're able to make that mortgage payment because you're still working. And then in the meantime, you've got other people paying off mortgages. And then when you retire, you're like, okay, to your point a minute ago, now instead of that one property, I just don't have a payment. No. Now I have $6, $7, $8, $9, $10,000 a month coming in on top of my 10,000 that I had here. And I think we need to be thinking this way. I mean, I know for me, my dad, I had to put him in one of my homes because he needed a place to live, and he lived in one of my rentals until he passed away. I mean, so, but that was like a gift because he didn't have to worry. He didn't have to worry about some kind of a rental in property or I mean, just it was important.
And that might be the next video we do, is talking about not from our students, but then our aging parents and how, we can support them. But so bringing this back and wrapping it up, I mean, there's just so many opportunities, and the greatest thing that we can possibly do is instill these foundational principles and stuff into our students, starting in high school, college, helping them to lay that foundation, maybe being a support if it's feasible, as a non-occupied co-borrower, gifting down payments, helping them guide to building credit worthiness and strength. So it creates opportunity for our kids out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else you want to touch on before we end this?
No, I think I think it's great. I think it's great for families. You know, you talked about all that to help your kids, but I mean, I think it's great for families to do together. I think there's a lot even in that what you just said is that you're going to teach them what a partnership looks like. You're going to teach them, you know, I mean, these are opportunities, right?
Yeah.
You're going to teach them what an investment looks like. You're going to teach them, you know, I mean, there's so many little things that can come out of this. That's what excites me is it's like we're really helping to educate. And these are practical things, guys. I mean, these are practical things. Who helped you buy your first house?
Yeah.
It's a crazy, but my parents they didn't even know what to tell me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
neither did mine. No.
So
So,
these are really important things, but I think they can be really fun for a family too.
okay, so somebody's listening to this right now. Um, how do they start and where's the foundation? Like, how do they start with us? So, Paul,
Yeah.
reach out to either of us. We both have worked together for well over 14 years. The other thing we are going to include a link to our first time home buyer workbook, and there is a link in this to the credit repair and credit tips and tricks that we put together. So we have access to those two workbooks as well. And then we here at Radiant Financial Group are just always ready to help you lay the foundation and do a consultation call to establish a plan for you and potentially for your college student and get you moving down that path towards wealth and real estate.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, all we want to do is ask our clients, you know, I mean, what's unique about us at Radiant is, you know, and Jen and I worked together a long time, as she mentioned, and both of us are 20 years plus in the business. And, you know, what makes us, I think, different and unique is that many of my clients have done over 10 transactions with me. And that's as they've built, it's as they've built, as they've moved up in homes or moved down, you know, in some cases. It's as they've moved away, moved back. It's as they've built residential real estate properties. And we've continued to build onto their portfolios, but it always comes back to the same thing. The ones that are really successful with it is they have a vision and they set a plan in place, right? And that planning, this isn't rocket science. It's going to change. Your dreams are going to get bigger, or, you know, things are going to, you're going to get a job offer somewhere else, and so, you know, whatever. There's going to be things that are opportunities or obstacles during the plan. But I mean, just call, get started with one of us, get on the phone with one of our amazing LOs or Jen herself here, and just get started. That's the best way to get the ball rolling.
Amen. I love it. All right. Well, thanks, Stace. This is a fun
Yeah,
conversation.
I love it. This is fun.
I love it.
Thank you
Awesome.
so much, Jen. I think this is super important, and I'm glad you took the time to dive into it.
Yeah, thank you. We've been talking about this for a while, so.